in the Lunch with Randy and Teddy conversations, where we invite people to come in and talk about whether it's job hunt related topics or professional development or just things that frankly are of interest to us. How does that sound? It's our show. We do what we want to do.
Whatever we want.
And we started back in April. Thought this would be a fun thing to try for a couple of weeks to kind of pass the time while everybody was hunkered down with COVID. And one thing's led to another. And here we are, well, into November, and we're booked through the end of the year with guests. This thing's really kind of taken off, and we get a nice group of followers from around, not just the Triad area, but really globally. And so our guests today, we have Lou Everett, we have Sherri McManus from the Lou Everett Group. They're going to talk today about leadership and also the 5 generations in the workplace, because for the first time in our history, we have 5 generations. So by the end of today, hopefully we'll understand the characteristics of these 5, but also if you're in leadership or aspire to be a leader, what are some tips you can take away today that might help you better lead a multi-generational workplace? So we'll get to that. But again, Randy Wooden with Goodwill of Northwest North Carolina. I run our professional center. I have clients all over the country, but predominantly here in the Triad. So if you or somebody you know that, might be looking, have them reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. Everything we do is free. I host some LinkedIn workshops as well. But one of the highlights of my week is to get together with my pal, Teddy. I've known you, Teddy, for many years now. And we share a lot of, some of the, well, this could be bad or good, depending how you look at it, but we share a lot of the same humor and some of the same life experiences too, about having some twists and turns that ultimately led us to where we are. And given those experiences and our desire to help, it really helps fuel this show and gives us some passion to really try to do right by folks. And so again, I'll turn it now to Teddy. You do your own introduction, you rascal you, and then throw it back to me, and I'll intro our special guest today. How's that sound?
Good stuff, buddy. We're getting better at this all the time, aren't we? Every day. So, hey, I'm Teddy Burriss. I'm a LinkedIn strategist, coach, trainer. Love helping people master the use of LinkedIn as a business tool in their career transition, in their career growth, and in their business. And the company I work for is Burriss Consulting. And there's not a lot of us, but a few of us, maybe other people on the show. I get to sleep with my boss. I mean, it's really pretty freaking cool. But and she locks me in my man cave to keep me working all day long. But yeah, my wife and I started the business almost 11 years ago, and love doing what we do. I'm going to monitor the chat. Randy's going to be our the host today. And so I'm going to monitor the questions. Please use the chat box to put questions out there, and I'll bring them up to the group as I can. Also, keep going here. We've got a whole lot of people in here. I need to know where you're from. I only know where some of you are from. Where are the rest of you from? And we want to have a little fun, share some ideas, intrigue you, poke you, make you think. And back to you, Randy.
Yep. And as I mentioned, we have Lou Everett and Sherri McManus of the Lou Everett Group. You guys are based out of Raleigh, right? Is it Raleigh, near Raleigh area?
Yeah, in the Raleigh-Durham area. We are, our home office is located just southeast of Raleigh.
Gotcha. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and also piggyback that with the why. Why did you start the business? What was the driver behind the Lou Everett Group?
Mm-hmm. Sure, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Yes. So thank you so much for allowing us to share our story and share our passion with your audience. So this is amazing. So thank you. So I'm Sherri McManus. This is Lou Everett. We are the Lou Everett Group. And yes, we are a married couple. That what we do. And we are executive leadership and leadership coaches and speakers and corporate trainers. And we really love the space to help small businesses for effective communication and really leadership that's missing so desperately right now. And there's a leadership deficit. So we are that space and that help to help new leaders as well as existing leaders to be even better and to create and really transform leaders within organizations.
Leadership is important, certainly. And I always try to understand what prompted the drive to do what you do. Was there a point in your career where you said, I'm working for a lousy boss, or, you know, I want to be better. How can I get better? What was it that the impetus that kind of pushed you along this path to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that's a good question. We're asked a lot, and it's different for each one of us. I'm very lucky that growing up, my mother, instead of letting me listen to my own music in the car while she was driving around into the store and dropping me off, I had to listen to cassette tapes of Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and leadership tapes of John Maxwell as we're in the car. And of course, as a teenager, you're like, oh, really? But, you know, it sticks with you. Sure. And over the years, you know, and of course, another time we can talk about the deep personal experiences, but, you know, I had a personal experience where my parents had changed direction of faith and joined a religious cult, which completely changed my view of life at 10 years old. And later on removed myself from that of differences of beliefs and because of leadership, ultimately. But that helped me really focus on me, my personal growth, understanding what it is that I need to do to help other people to be able to understand what true leadership is. And so throughout my life, that really is what changed what my direction was and my purpose was, to be able to help other people identify what real leadership truly is about. And we can talk about that as we move along here. But then later on, as we move along, I've worked with leaders that really needed some additional help to play it nicely, to understand that their top-down positional style leadership was not effective, and only realizing that I had to act an example in order to make that change happen. So that's my personal experience. And Sherri has her own. And you can talk about that briefly on what your why is, because that really was what our why was eventually, what really put the nail in the casket, if you will, of our old careers and into our new career.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I don't know what you guys were doing, but on August 13th of 2018, I found myself in the hospital in the ICU in the burn center. I was there for 10 days, and we at the time didn't know if I was going to live or die. And at that time, it started out as a simple cold and just kept kind of progressing. And thankfully, with the good doctors, they found out I ended up getting a rare disease that anybody can have. And thankfully, I survived. I could have been there for 30 days. So this particular disease, it attacked all my good mucous membranes, and it was revolting. So I was burning from the inside out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had minimal damage that came out of it, but again, it could have been so much worse. It could have been blind. It could have been death. And the reason I share that story is because prior to this, I was in a work environment that was very high sales, very focused on getting that next sale, getting that type of, I guess, that environment. It was just so high, right? But that's normal, right? We've been in that. Lou and I've been salespeople for most of our lives. Right. That wasn't really the issue. The issue was that leadership at that time was so focused on the bottom line that they forgot to value their employees, and they were getting away from that. And it didn't start out that way. It was a slowly eroding, and it was to the point where it was unexpectations of working 70 plus hours a week, and even verbal abuse. And in our opinion, that no one needs to tolerate that. So for me, I was like the go all the time. And it turned into a very crash and burn type of situation. So that's, after being on the hospital, after 10 days, it took us that space and that time to really look back and go, wait a minute, what's the meaning of true leadership here? And that's when I chose to deep dive more into personal development, and leadership is not positional. It is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Yeah. And that became our journey to share with others.
That was our motto. That's what really said, you know what, we are doing what we need to do, but we need to step in deeper to really make a difference to other people.
Sure. I appreciate you sharing the story. And again, if you have questions, go ahead and chat them in the chat box. My cohort, Teddy, is monitoring that. So here are some topics, just so you know, if you're watching, some of the topics that we hope to tackle today. One is to understand, what are the 5 generations in the workplace today? What are their characteristics? How are they motivated? What are their concerns? That kind of a thing. We'll talk more about leadership and what is leadership, what is it not. Millennials, huge generational force is in the workplace now. What is that generation's impact on business? We're also going to touch on how to lead cross-generational teams. Here again, we've got 5 generations, mostly 4, but I mean, there's a little bit of the oldest generation that's still there working. Also ask the age-old question, are leaders born or can they be taught? So we'll cover that, and we'll cover your questions as well. So let's get started with what true leadership is and is not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. I love the question, Randy, and I'm really excited that you chose to ask that question, because it's up for debate. People have different views of opinion, but the fact of the matter is that leadership is proven over time. And so, as Sherri said, leadership is all about influence. It's nothing else. Okay, what I mean by that is who we are as a leader is solely dependent upon how we influence other people. You cannot be a leader if you don't influence people in the way that causes them to want to follow you. You want them to follow you, you don't have to follow you, right? I mean, you've got 2 different avenues. So you think about it as a leader. You go in and you say, here's the policy manual. Here's what we got to do. Get it done. Here's the numbers. Why aren't you at the numbers? And you're dictating, right? You're at that positional style because you have positional, right? Basically leading down, but not really leading down. You're forcibly leading down by position. And what that does is, people will come in, they'll clock in, they'll do what you say, they'll clock out and say, peace. And I want nothing to do with you until they get back the next day. A leader that leads with influence causes people to want to work. They want to work for you. They want to follow you. And you don't have to tell them what to do because they want to do it. Now, there's a lot of dynamics involved to really strengthen ourselves as a leader to get to that level of leadership. But that's what leadership truly is about. Positional style leadership is truly focused on their position. I'm an authority. You have to do what I say. Right. Without really understanding the influence that you actually can have on people, to not just as a good person to do the right thing, but to truly impact productivity in a company and on a team. So if I was to sum that up, leadership is about influence. It's nothing more, nothing less.
And it doesn't have to, I'm assuming it doesn't have to be your boss that's the leader. You could have co-workers who are leaders that, even though by title you're their peer, you still kind of gravitate toward them. Is that, am I making that up, or is that something that you see on the job?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Because a leader is not about position, right? It's not about title. It's about how we influence other people by what we do and our performance and how we interact with other people. And a matter of fact, that's the lowest form of leadership is that positional style leadership. That's the lowest form, right? Now, the highest form of leadership is when you have that influence, right? So it's interesting you mentioned this, because peer leadership, really, there's if you haven't seen this or read it, you may have, Randy, it sounds like you may have, there's a leadership compass. And that leadership compass, it's made up of just like any other compass, right? You have north, south, east, and west. You've got those diagonals. Now, that lower form of leadership is that positional style. We've got that's the lowest form. But now that middle, right there in the middle, right where that center line is peer leadership. Because people now follow you because they want to, because of who you are, how you've influenced them, how you've helped them, how you've helped the productivity because of influencing and really building up that rapport with other people. And then, of course, the highest form, in my opinion, is leading up, where you've got leaders at the higher level, possibly positional, that actually will follow you, even though you're not at that position, because they want to, they're inspired by you, they use you because of who you are and how you've been able to impact and influence other people.
I think you also get a sense of empowerment if I am the underling and you are my boss, but I see that you value my input, because let's face it, I'm the one on the boots on the ground doing the job every day.
That's right.
And if you're my boss and you take my opinion into account and not just hear it in this ear and out that ear, but implement it, I feel invested now in the company. And I think, we kick that word around. Are you invested in the company? I think that goes hand in hand with leadership. It really does, because you're doing it because you want to. Not because it's the carrot and the stick, I suppose, kind of. And at least in this case, it's the carrot that really keeps people engaged, and it would be a good sign of a leader. Again, if we have any questions, go ahead and chat them in the chat box. Teddy, anything you see out there?
And so Lou, you use a phrase that something along the lines of, they're like, see you, and they're out of here. I remember a couple organizations I worked with over the years, and I heard this phrase. I've never heard it before, and now I know what it means. 8 and gate.
8 and gate.
8
Clock
and gate.
out, I'm out.
Yeah, no, the employees, like, I don't like this environment. I don't like this leader. I don't like what they're making me do and how they're making me do it. So I'm 8 and gate.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now I get it on the other side. On the other side is get the work done and no overtime and all that stuff. But that term 8 and gate comes from the worker. And that typically means that the environment is bad and or maybe because of the leadership is bad.
That's right. That's cool. No, that's cool, Teddy. And and they get tired of it or they get sick. I mean, we have seen situations where the environment is so toxic from the type of leadership that's there that people are getting sick. We have seen it. We've seen where there's pregnant women losing children, losing their babies because of the stress that's been induced upon that toxicity. Now, we have a choice as an employee to leave a company that's so stressful, but not everyone has that opportunity or has grown to the potential to say, maybe I should, because of the toxic environment, you're making people believe they're not good enough. You may not say that, but that's how they feel. And so where are they going to go? And it's that toxicity that makes that happen. And we're just trying to, like you said, Teddy, it's not worth the health. It's not worth your body.
And as a job seeker, we need to be aware of the fact that organizations want to hire leaders because a leader knows how to get the workforce, Randy's word, and I agree that invested in the department, invested in the goal to achieve the overall goals. And so when we can present ourselves as a job seeker, as someone who understands what real leadership is and how it creates, I want to use the phrase mutually beneficial value. That can differentiate us from someone who walks in and goes, oh man, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know how to whoop them into space or whoop them into the right role. That's old school philosophies that only reason they worked back then is because nobody was willing to think of a different idea. Randy, back to you.
Let's shift gears just a little bit now because we can. And five generations in today's workplace. So let's take a look at what those 5 are. Do we want to name them first and then from there start at the beginning and kind of talk about some of their characteristics? So how old you are if you're watching the show. We'll see how closely these guys nail your generation. So where do we start? You want to start at the high age or at the beginning?
Yeah. No, we can start right at the top.
Teddy's age. Teddy's age.
I knew
he knew that was coming.
I sensed that one, Randy.
Yeah.
Felt that one from a mile away.
Where do we start on this thing? What's the oldest?
Let's start right at the top with the traditionalists, right? We're right there at the top with the traditionalists that make about 2%, 1% of the workforce at this point. They were born 1925 to 45, and they're in that gap there. And they're very dependable. They're very straightforward. They're very tactful, very loyal people. Right. Now, keep in mind what the history is there. They're shaped by things like the Great Depression, World War II, the radios, movies, those types of things. Now, the important things for us to understand as leaders is we have to understand the culture in order to lead and manage, right? And so what motivates them? Well, traditionalists are motivated by respect, by recognition, by good old culture, providing long-term value to a company. That's where the traditionalists come from. Now, how do we communicate with them? Well, personal touch, the personal touch style, handwritten notes instead of email, handwritten notes, thank you cards, handwritten out and sent out, those types of things.
Which is coming back, by the way.
Which is coming way back because it needs to. That is a really good tradition, right? And the worldview, we've got to understand the worldview to lead them. So the worldview is obedience over individualism, right? Age equals seniority, advancing through the hierarchy, right? So employers really need to provide satisfying work and opportunities for them to contribute and emphasize the stability, right, that can be offered in that company.
Now, these are traditionalists. These are the ones you say that were born from the mid-20s to prior to World War II?
Right. Yeah, well, 45 is, so you're looking at right near the end there, right? So you're talking, and they're also known as, I guess the other names for them might be the silent generation, right? You might have heard of that as well, but that is right from 1925 to 1945.
And you say only about 1 or 2% of the population. And quite frankly, I couldn't name maybe even a single person who I know personally in that age group, but they do still exist in today's workplace, even if it's on a part-time basis. And that may be the case where they supplement their retirement because let's face it, they want to be productive and feel as though they contribute. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly
anything else
right.
you'd like to mention about the traditionalists before we move to my generation?
Besides the fact that we need to bring some of that respect and recognition back. Yes,
we do. And old school, I hear you. So what's next? What's the second from the top?
The second from the top is the baby boomers, right? And we might be in the same room here with baby boomers, I think. Although you just said Teddy was he looks great for his age, by the way. I wouldn't have.
He's like fine wine. He's
it's
like
oil of Olay, Lou. Oil of Olay.
That's the secret. That's the secret right there. Yeah, the baby boomers. They're born between 1946, 1964. They're optimistic, competitive, workaholics, team oriented, and they make up roughly. I mean, this fluctuates about 25% of the workforce. Interestingly enough, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, millennials have completely overpowered that part of the workforce, and we'll talk about that and how that looks for businesses. But again, these baby boomers are shaped by, these are my parents, our parents. They're shaped by the Vietnam War, Civil Rights Movement, Watergate, like all those types of things that happened during that time. Now, what's their motivation? Well, for a company, it's company loyalty, teamwork, right? A sense of duty, sense of responsibility. And communicating with them as a leader, as a manager, or even just as a teammate, as a team member, is you communicate them whatever is most efficient, what we're going to do, right? Including phone calls and face-to-face. That's more, I want phone calls face-to-face more than preferred than other types of communication. And achievement comes after paying one's dues to a baby boomer, right? You pay your dues, sacrifice for success, and an employer needs to provide them with very specific goals, very specific deadlines. Put them in mentor roles so they can help mentor other people, offer coaching style feedback, that type of thing. So those are the baby boomers.
Let me ask you because I'm a boomer and Teddy, you are too, I know. And so I see a lot of myself in what you're saying. And I'm wondering, and we'll get to millennials and Gen X and we'll get to that. But what I'm wondering is, did I have those same characteristics when I was the age of today's millennials?
Right.
Or have my views and my motivations and my drivers, have those things morphed over time as I've gotten older and wiser? Let's go with that. Just go with that. All right. Just play with me.
I like the quotes you had there.
A little air quotes there. Yeah. But do you see, is there evidence, any studies that show that these generations have changed, morphed over time as they've kind of moved through this whole timeline?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's one thing that every single one of these generations have in common.
Yeah.
We're people. We're human beings, and human beings evolve over time. That evolution that happens over time with us growing up is dependent, though, upon what our culture was at the time and age that we were at that age. What was the environment like? What were the economics? So we're impacted by that. So and we're also with technology, which we'll talk about how that has impacted the current generations. but we're all people. And what we're talking about here, and yeah, these are generations. These are not labels. These are generations. And these are generations that have been impacted by and shaped by the environment that you grew up in. We all grew up in. And that's really what makes us. But you make a valid point. We're still human. At 13 years old, there's a lot of commonalities between today's 13-year-old and a 13-year-old in 1946. Okay, there just are, and some personalities and some ways that we may behave as a human. However, the shaping of who we are is different, right? How we're shaped is what changes the evolution of who we become.
Yeah, I can remember, I can't recall what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I can remember the moon landing. I can remember the Berlin Wall. I can remember Watergate. I can remember a whole lot of things. And yeah, they do shape your worldview. They shape your experiences and so forth. So, all right, so we've covered the tradition.
So, FYI, Randy, you had carrot sticks for breakfast yesterday. And James Barnhart's asking a question.
That just wore me out, Teddy. I tell you what, I'm trying to eat right and all that. You know, I just, my butcher, his name is Sal. So yeah, salmonella, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, all out across the internet, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that. My good friend Randy Wooden, he's in town all week long.
Yeah, so. Try the veal. Try the veal.
James wants to know, and it's a little bit different question, but it's at least worth putting a moment into it. Are there still? I hate this word, and I'll tell you the reason why I hate this word later. Are there still loyal companies out there that are loyal to the employee?
Right.
Quick thought.
Yes, there are. That's the answer. And the reason and it's hard sometimes to see it. And it also depends on, like, I'm sure Teddy, you would agree with this, because the word loyal it depends on the definition of loyal, and depends on the generational definition of loyal, right? It's a little different. And also economically, we're in a different time as well. Yeah, so if loyal means, is there companies that will remain loyal to an employee where you can stay with them for, up until retirement? From
get the golden watch.
You get the golden watch. They still do exist. They just exist in a different way. And I'm going to tell you right now, I will put my vote in the millennial companies to bring that back. And we'll talk about that as we move along as well.
The reason why I don't like the word loyal is in part what you said, the definition of it. And I remember working for a business owner / leader who said, I am sick and tired of the employees who come to work for me for 4 or 5 years and leave. They're not loyal to me. And that's when I got on my soapbox and defined the definition behind loyal from my perspective. But that's aside. Randy?
Hey, we're halfway through today's show. We have Lou Everett and Sherri McManus of the Lou Everett Group. They're here to talk about leadership, and not just leadership in general, but leadership as it relates to the 5 generations in today's workplace. And so we've talked about what leadership is and isn't. Right now, we're smack dab in the middle of the 5 generations. We've talked about traditionalists, and we've also talked baby boomers. So Gen X is next, right?
You got it, Randy.
Okay, let's talk. Who are they? Who are they, and how old are they?
Yeah, well, Gen X, they're born between 1965 and 1980. Their generation tends to be flexible, more informal, skeptical, independent. That's our generation. Okay. Things that shaped this generation: the AIDS epidemic, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the .com boom, right? The internet boom. Generation X is motivated by diversity, work-life balance, their personal, professional interests rather than company interests. They want to have that balance. How do you communicate with Gen X? Well, very similar to what we just talked about with the baby boomers. Whatever's more efficient. That includes phone calls and face-to-face. But whatever's more efficient. If it's efficient to communicate via Zoom. So in other words, Gen X may have had a little bit easier time kind of acclimating to the current pandemic of meeting virtually, right? That's a possibility. The worldview there, they favor diversity. right? They're quick to move on if their employer decides and fails to meet their needs. Okay, no problem. And they're resistant to change at work if it affects their personal life. If it affects your personal life, I'm a little hesitant there, but that's a Gen X. So what is, as employers, what should we do with the Gen X generation? We need to give them immediate feedback right away. Don't wait because it sits there and ponders in their mind. Okay, give immediate feedback, provide flexible work arrangements, give that work-life balance, and extend the opportunities for personal development. Gen X is really big into personal development. So those are the baby boomers, and they make up a pretty large amount. I would say 33 to 34% of the workforce.
Yeah, for Gen X. Let me ask you this then. No, I'm sorry, Teddy, go ahead.
Yeah, so Randy and I were talking earlier a couple of days ago, and I said, man, I got to hear the story from Lou and Sherri, because I don't see 5 generations in my family that are working, and I just discovered a reason. I don't have any Gen X in my family. I fall in the baby boomer, and I would love to say closer to the younger side of that. And my oldest daughter was born in 88.
There you go.
She was born 82, but 82 to 88. So that's a whole generation I skipped. At least I think I did.
Yeah.
Hey, wanted to ask you guys about the identity. If I'm hearing right, the oldest generation or two, a lot was the hard work, you'll be recognized, loyalty, and that. And if I'm hearing and sort of reading between the lines here, as we get to younger generations, the workers are not as defined by the job they have and how that holds their place in society. It sounds like more focus is shifting toward quality of life outside of employment. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. That is very fair to say. And you'll start to see that as we gradually move into the younger generation, that is a focus, but then the focus begins to shift, not just from personal life, but even more like, okay, where do I need to feel like I add value?
Well, they want a bigger cause,
right? And we're going to, as you move along into the millennials, which is what's next, that is really the crux there. And you're right. You start to see that trend.
And here,
yeah.
I want to offer this. Something else you said, Lou. I want to go back to baby boomers just for a moment. And I think there's probably a fair number of baby boomers on here. We'll do that poll later on. But, one of the things you said about baby boomers is they make great mentors. I think I heard you say that. So when you're positioning yourself to go work for an organization, and you might be thinking you're going to get challenged with that age discrimination or that overqualified perspective, maybe look for organizations where there are opportunities to play that role.
Yeah.
It's another thought. So
absolutely.
Great point.
And diversity is more than gender and more than race. It's also generational. And that's, again, a big reason why you're here, is helping us understand the characteristics and some of the things that motivate them to be a better leader for those that are of a different generation.
Right.
So you're Gen X, right? You've got Gen X. Anything else you wanted to throw in about the Gen X?
Oh, I was just gonna say that there's strengths in each one, and and it's always good to pull on those strengths. There are organizations that we have come across that they shove the baby boomers in a corner and say, "Oh, well, they're just old and they're gonna retire in a few years." Yeah, I know, shocker, right?
Yeah.
And they're not, and it's so sad because they could use
missed opportunity.
Yeah, they're missed opportunities to learn,
mentor other people.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. Millennials doesn't know everything. Gen X doesn't know everything, but the baby boomers don't either. But let's come together and be like, hey, here's a solution that you may have not even thought about because I've lived it. And then there's, of course, the younger generation. We're just like, well, here's more, be innovative and be like, oh. But there's so many strengths on both sides, and you have to look at the opportunities.
Right.
So now we're on to the 4th generation on down, right? After Gen X would be Millennials. Yeah.
We have Millennials, are also known as Gen Y, right? We've heard that term been thrown around a little bit. But the Millennials are born in between 81 and 2000, right? 81, 2000. I've got 2 children that are Millennials. And this is going to be a staggering note. I'm going to mention this for you. Right now, we're at 35 to 36% of the workforce. And listen to this very carefully. Within the next 4.5 years or so, millennials are going to make up of 75% of the workforce. Okay, that is based on Accenture and other polls. That is the trend. So it's imperative for us to fully understand what drives the millennial generation.
Sure.
They're very competitive. They're very civic and open-minded. Sometimes baby boomers and even Gen X will say maybe they're a little more open-minded than I'm comfortable with, but that's what's good, what we can learn from, right? They're achievement-oriented. Just think about what they're shaped by. They're shaped by Columbine, 9/11. Right. And then, of course, the internet is just all they've ever known. They've not known anything outside the internet. They didn't know what it was like to be without it. They're motivated by responsibility, giving them responsibility. They're also motivated by the quality of their manager. Unique work experiences is what I'm doing different. Is it giving me excitement? Their communication style, right here. Right? Texts, emails, instant messaging, technology, and how they think of the world, right? They think of the world, they're seeking challenges. They want growth. They want development, a fun life and kind of work life and a home life. They want it balanced out. And they're very likely to have an organization or to leave an organization if they don't like change. If the organization is not comfortable with change and new ideas, they're going to leave. Even if they're getting paid a lot of money, because it's not about money for the millennials. It's about me adding value and me also receiving value and making sure my voice is heard. Mm-hmm. So an employer needs to get to know them personally. And so older generations will look at it like, well, we got a fine line between professional and personal. Well, millennials need that personal communication. Need to know them personally. Ask them about their children. Ask them about what they did over the weekend, what their ideas are. Manage by results, because they will perform. Be flexible though on their schedule and their work assignments, and give them immediate feedback. Hey, I loved how you did that project. An amazing job. Or, hey, you know what? We need to do some work on this. As long as you're giving them immediate feedback, they'll take it. Okay. Again, we're looking at 75% of the workforce in the next 4.5 years. So it's imperative that as leaders and managers and employees, we're going to be working with millennials, and they have the ideas for the next, some of the next solid, strong businesses that are already in existence, huge corporations already that have been started by millennials.
Now, another thing, Randy's heard me say this, Lou, Sherri, you don't know this about me yet, but I have 4 daughters who don't have jobs. I have 4 daughters who have their own businesses, and they're all in this Gen Y millennial space. And so, I mean, and they have niche businesses. I mean, they are not, lawyers or accountants or whatever. They have very niche businesses. So I'm wondering, is the Gen Y one of the big catalysts for this gig economy space that we're in?
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you on that. Mm-hmm. I would say yes to that. It's their innovation, their willingness to be open-minded, and of course they get fed up with working for companies that don't provide them that outlet, and so they're like, well, I'll just start my own business. Let me find something innovative and do it myself, and they have that drive, right? And so that's true. I agree with that,
and that's going to keep growing. Mm-hmm. Huge organizations are going to start struggling because they're going to lose their workforce as the workforce decides, well, I can go off and do this, and I love to freaking do this, and people pay me for it. Mm-hmm. It's going to cause a huge dynamic shift, especially as us baby boomers start deciding we don't want to do work anymore.
Right.
Hey, we've got one more generation, and then we're going to move to other related topics about how to lead the generations. Then we'll kind of summarize things, and Teddy and I'll offer our own little story that I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. Hey, what's the fifth one? And they're just kind of coming into the game now, aren't they?
Right. That's Generation Z,
Yep.
right? Generation Z. They were born 2000 to 2020, right? And it's more of they're global. They see things globally. They're very entrepreneurial. So they're progressive, but they're also less focused. Because so keep in mind, they're shaped after, now we know that the millennials were shaped from things like 9/11. Well, this is the generation after, right? The life after 9/11, the Great Recession, access to technology. I mean, they're basically born with a cell phone in their hands, right? I mean, this is part of their life at a very young age. They're motivated by diversity, personalization, feeling attached, individuality. I want to be myself, creativity, and how we would communicate with them, just like the millennials. Instant messaging, text, social media. They're part of that internet generation. Their whole worldview is about self-identity. Right? Self-identity is they're also kind of they've identified. Yeah, I'm addicted to technology. They're addicted to digital devices. Okay, and they admit that it's okay. That's their life. That's what they do. They value independence. They value individuality. But they also believe, this is interesting too, they prefer to work with managers that are millennials. Go figure. Those are very similar, right? They know they're going to have that outlet. They're going to have that ability to share that and be open-minded. And they're innovative, right?
Aren't they
what should employers do?
Hey, digital natives, isn't that another term for that generation? Digital native?
Yeah, addictive native. Yeah, something like that. Addictive natives.
Digital natives. I'd heard
Digital
that term
natives.
a while back. Because they were in the crib, they were fiddling with their phones.
Yeah. Digital natives. That's interesting.
Randy, they weren't fiddling with their phones. They were doing stuff.
Fiddling, man. They were fiddling. They were finagling. When is the last time you heard the word finagling? I think my grandfather did that back years ago. Hey, anything else we want to talk about that generation? And is a generation alpha that is
coming up?
Even the next one that nobody knows?
Yeah, that's what the verbiage sounds like. Yeah, that's where we're coming. That's where we're headed. And
I doubt I'll have anything to do with that.
No.
All right. So I guess now we've heard the 5 generations and how to lead them, how they differ, how they're motivated. And I don't know that we'll ever in 1 hour be able to put this entirely into a capsulized form here, but right. I know we do want to summarize. But before I do, and before I let you get away, we've heard the old question, are leaders born or are they taught? What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that the whole idea of a born leader is a myth. There are people that as they grow as humans, that they have traits of becoming a good leader, right? They have leadership traits, things like that. But leadership is learned. It's practiced. You can pick up a book and read all you want on leadership. So leadership is learned by practice. You've got to get out there and learn it, do it, be the example of it, influence it, fail at it, get coaches to help you through it, mentors, all those things. That's what develops a leader. Leadership is developed. So you can't be born with something that's developed in that capacity. We don't have the experience of working with people and managing people, understanding the value of people, right? So that is absolutely learned. I believe that it's a myth that they're born leaders. We have characteristics.
I was going to say we have characteristics,
but
and there are some folks that are very talented in this world. Mm-hmm. I mean, have you seen in passing and in maybe who you work with or somebody you've met that seems like they have such a charmed life, right? Everything just seems so easy breezy with that. But they worked into their strengths. They leaned into their strengths. And I think the self-awareness is so key. So if you have those characteristics like, wow, I feel comfortable in sharing my thoughts with others and leading into XYZ project, or, you know, or a family. Hey, if you're a family, you're a leader. You know, if you're mom, you're a parent, you're a leader.
You work in a community.
You work in a community, you're a leader. It doesn't have to be this organizational
or a
sense
title.
or a title, right? With that, so yeah, so lean into that. I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah, just kind of piggybacking what you said.
Well, have you ever met somebody that said, "Man, they got such good potential, but man, what's wrong with them?" Because we can see the potential in them, right?
What but that's happened to him, right? Yeah.
We can see it in them.
Randy.
Yeah, and take it to the sports world. Take somebody like a Tiger Woods. As a young kid, he had opportunity, he had coaching, he was encouraged, and yet if he didn't continue to develop those skills, he'd just be another guy playing golf, playing at golf, I should say, like me. All right, so it's about 1:45. We've got Lou Everett and we have Sherri McManus of the Lou Everett Group. They're here today. We've been talking about leadership, but also the different characteristics of the 5 generations that exist in today's workplace. So I'm going to ask both of you guys, if you could, to kind of wrap this thing up from your perspective. What are some takeaways you'd like us to have?
The first thing I'd like to say is understand as a manager, if you're a manager, even in your workplace, if you're not a leader and you're working around the different generations, understand that it is our responsibility as people, especially if we're a leader, to understand the differences. Don't necessarily listen to stereotypes. Verify them, ask them, work with each other. We need people to be successful. That's what we need. Whether they're millennials or Generation Z, or whether it doesn't matter. They're not labels. They help us give an insight into how they think, what their culture may have been like. If we don't, because we don't know what each other's experiences are. If we're from these different generations and not really understand it, you Randy and Ted, you guys can talk about things because your experiences, and all I can remember is, I saw that on a rerun. You know, those are very different experiences, but you see, we all need to come together to get those stories and experiences. So if I was to say, if there's a takeaway from this as a leader, get to know your people, understand what makes them tick, understand what it is that's going to help them thrive, because what's going to happen is they're going to help your business thrive if you understand them.
Yeah, so it's more than just being nice to people, but it's providing the investing in people, providing the tools and being there to support them as well. Sherri, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you're fine. Sorry. No, I think that my biggest take is to encourage new leaders or existing leaders, especially in this time right now and COVID, and we're starting to go back to work, is to, if you're a leader, I can't stress enough to continue to learn, continue to be the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Yeah. If you're just, I'm the expert in your field and I don't need to know about anything else, that's only going to get you so far. You're limiting yourself.
Right.
Imagine that you can, pour into more people and to equip your people even more, and your business can boom. Just imagine if you can just personally develop yourself. It's an investment to yourself. So read a book, but then apply it. Don't be a shelf health book. Oh yeah, that was great. And then just leave it away. No, practice. It's to practice it with your employees, a practice with your culture, to get that into your culture as a new leader. I can't stress that enough, is the personal development.
Yeah.
Very cool. Teddy, you want me to go first and you want to wrap it, or what do you want to do here?
Go ahead, man. I got a story by the way, at the 45-minute mark, when you see me doing this, I'm taking all this that I got from that and put it on here. So go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I'll give it a run. Teddy, then you'll share some thoughts and you can throw it back to me if you want, or you just want to take it from there and talk about our show for next week. And I think back, I may have mentioned this during the show today. I'm not entirely sure, but the word encouragement, unless or until I was encouraged in life, I'm of the generation that says, know your place. I'm baby boomer. You start out on the bottom rung of the ladder, you bust your tail, you do this, you do that. And, then people will recognize you. And without somebody, whether it's parents, a ball coach as a kid, one of my baseball coaches, even a hockey coach I had. And I think back to times when somebody say, hey, Randy, you can do this. And the light bulb went off. And I'd always pretty much been encouraged as a kid to do well. And by and large, I did pretty well in school, and at least until I got to college. But, I did pretty well. I was never a world, scholar or world athlete. I was pretty well-rounded, but I never saw myself as a leader until, whether in high school or playing some sports teams, or I got to college and our fraternity and some things where people saw more in me than I saw in myself. And they said, you can do this, and we want you to do this. And it's almost like a drug in a way. I'm like, okay, woo, I didn't die. I didn't die doing this. This is kind of cool, because now I can grow and I can also influence other people. And one thing led to another and to another and to another. And again, not to go into, 10 chapters of life here, but it goes back to, at some point, somebody lit that fuse. They encouraged me. And if nothing else, it gave me the confidence that says, okay, maybe I do belong. Maybe I do fit in and contribute. And so absent that, and I feel bad for kids that grow up without any kind of that encouragement to have them go for it. They're told they're ugly, they're fat, they're stupid, they're never going to amount to anything, and they begin to believe it. And if at some point in their life, somebody could step in and just say, hey, doesn't have to be that way. And that would be that mentor. That would be that person that you guys have talked about. And, I've tried to be that way with people in business and with my clients, not always successfully, of course, but I've always remembered that it took that outside influence for the light bulb to come on. And I'm grateful that it did, but if it hadn't, I don't know that I'd be sitting here today. So there you go, Teddy.
Good stuff, buddy.
Buddy.
So here's what Lou, Sherri, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate you guys sharing. This is good conversation. This is what I heard, and what you reminded me of as well. And that is this, as job seekers, as business leaders, as business owners, we have to be eager, not just open, but eager to be involved in a generationally diverse environments. Because by the way, if 25% are baby boomers and we're all thinking about leaving here and going hanging out in Key West, that's going to open a big opening. So we have to be, eager to be in those environments, not only because of the shift in the workforce, but also because, as you said, we all experience, I personally experienced, that we learn from each other. I'm willing to take risks now that my Gen Z grandkids have challenged me to do. And I'm also learning from my own daughters who are starting their own business, have started their own businesses, the risks they're willing to take and the way they go about doing things that I start adopting into my world, and vice versa. So be eager, not just open to be in a generationally diverse environment. Here's the other thing. I'm with you on the word, take leadership out. We're influencers. We're influencers. And I mean, it really is the right word if we're doing it right. And so we should be learning new skills to be better influencers. We should be every day. I wrote down this. I've heard this numerous times. I heard this from a client. I don't have time to read a book or listen to a podcast. Really? What you just bluntly said to yourself is, I am happy being a dinosaur. And that's just not going to create a better influencer, a better business leader, et cetera, et cetera. So as influencers and leaders, we need to be willing and eager to find new ways to learn and new ways to grow. Greg's laughing at the dinosaur joke. We also, as influencers, need to think this way. It is not our job to change a human. So when we get a job, we shouldn't come in and go, yep, I'm going to change that entire division for you. That doesn't work. You can't change people. what you can do as a leader in a new role or in an existing role is you can influence people. You can get them to be willing to experiment, get them to be willing to listen to new ideas, get them to be willing to try things they've never tried. And the most powerful thing I think I've heard from this conversation and from others before is the way you can influence people is by showing them you're willing to do the same thing. So if you're looking for a job, don't go in and say, I'm going to fix it all and change them all. I'm going to bring in ideas that can influence and help us grow collectively. That's my rant from this conversation. Lou, Sherri, thanks a lot. Randy, back to you for our, by the way, touch on our 2 shows coming up, buddy. Touch on next week and then start the dialogue about the week after. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm going to take a guess at it because I am totally flying blind on this. So back me up on this. If,
I got it.
If I make a mistake, but I tell you what, next Wednesday, the 11th of November, happens to be Veterans Day. So we thought it might be appropriate to celebrate veterans and not just to say, hey, thanks for your service, because they hear that a lot. And I get it that's meaningful and it's impactful. But the twist that we want to add to this twofold. One is we're going to have among our guests, we'll have someone that'll talk about some of the various services that are available to help veterans and their families, and not just job hunt services, but life services, counseling, other related needs that people may have. But beyond that, we're also going to have veterans on here to include Vietnam era veterans. So we've got the cross-generational as well, the Desert Storm. And I was this close to getting a Korean era veteran, but don't think we'll have that. But they're going to share their transition from military life. And these were military, in some cases, military leaders, okay, moving over now into civilian life. What were some of the stereotypes they faced? Some of the biases, some of the prejudice they faced? You talk about the Vietnam era for the baby boomers. And yeah, coming out at that time, much different if they were to have come out just in the last few years. So they're going to talk about that transition, some of the things they learned, some of the fears and apprehensions they had. And we hope to not just inform, but also to inspire and to say, hey, you know what? We've made it. We've made that transition. You can too. And if you're watching, or if you know somebody who is a veteran or about to come out, we're also looking to have a spouse of a veteran, the hero behind the hero, to talk about what life is like for them at home while their spouse is on active duty. So that's the show that we have coming up next week. And the week after that, is that our Clifton Strengths?
No.
No?
No, and no. So we don't need to talk a whole lot about the 18th. The 18th is a state and federal government review again.
Bingo.
That's not the one I really wanted to let the audience know about, though, Randy. I mean, it's going to be a great conversation, post-elections where we're going. But the 25th is the one I want to start encouraging people for.
Oh, yeah, the Thanksgiving. Yeah, the Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so what we're going to do on the 25th is we're going to make this all about you.
Yep.
And so what we want to do, and you'll see this when Randy and I shared it on social and through the banners and the blimps that fly around the country. But we want audience participation as we talk about being thankful during troubling times, being thankful when you lost your job, which for most people off the top of their head, they're going, that's hard to do, but we can do it. And I think many of those, especially many of you on this call, have figured out how to be thankful. So we want to pull you into those conversations and get you to share with us why you're thankful even in troubling times.
And that's the day before Thanksgiving, right?
That's 25th, November 25th.
Yes, Wednesdays out. Anyway, so as always, if you have ideas for other topics or guests, let us know, and we'll try to get them on the show. So again, Lou Everett, Sherri McManus, thank you very much from the Lou Everett Group. We learned we're smarter having sat through this last hour. I can tell you that. I personally want to thank you both for taking time out of your day. I can see, like with the sundial, I can see the sun creeping.
Yeah.
Your temperature has to be going up by the minute that is baking you. But again, thank you both for coming out. And again, for those that have watched today, we appreciate you. And we'll see you next week, same time, Wednesday at noon, for Lunch with Randy Wooden and Teddy Burriss. Have a good day, guys.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.